Oh, I think we are officially live on Substack. Hello, Substack. I need a better term to call y'all because calling you Substack feels very strange. But hello, I am so looking forward to being here with you today. If you're joining, sometimes it tells me who's here, sometimes it doesn't. It just tells me that people are here. So hello, say hi in the chat as we're going through this today. Hey, Katie, nice to see you. As I'm going through this, I really want to workshop this with you and take you behind the scenes in terms of what I'm seeing really working with content marketing. And to answer the question, is content marketing still working? I'll just answer it. Obviously, it's in the title. Yes, it is still working, but I think it has absolutely shifted, and what is working is different. I think overall it is feeling harder for a lot of people. And when I take a look at my business and my clients, I will speak for myself. This is maybe annoying to hear, but content feels easier than ever, and I'm getting better results than even in 2020. And so I want to break down why that is, specifically the strategy and approach that I have shifted into that I'm seeing convert very well into my one-on-one offer, my 12K coaching program, but also really seeing support clients to have really great launch results. I have clients who just closed out multi-five-figure launch, sold out a group program. So I'm seeing this translate really well there as well in different industries. So I'm going to break down what that is. It is very, very, very simple. I always want this to be as simple as possible, but then I'll walk through why I see at least some of my clients resist this so that we can unpack that a little bit. And then I'll leave you with some prompts that you can take to apply this to your own business. So hope you will walk away with this, both understanding what the approach is, but actually having some prompts so that you can apply this and see this work in your own business. I want this to work for you. So again, as I'm going through this, if something doesn't make sense, if it isn't clear, leave me a comment, leave me a question. I'm also a words of affirmation girl. So if it's making sense, let me know. I want this to benefit you. And if you're watching on the replay, same, just tag me so that I can see your questions. So let me just pull up my notes for you. So what I wanted to open with, and I think this is just important to name. If you've followed my content for any length of time, I've been speaking to the changes online, and it just feels so important to name over and over again so that we're not gaslighting one another. The industry has shifted. The world, I was just talking about this with a client. Every single business in the entire world has seen things shift because globally with AI, forget the trust recession. I think that does exist in the personal development space, but with AI, everything is shifting. And as humans, how we consume things, how we consume information, how we consume content, how we are buying has dramatically shifted. And so you are not crazy if you feel like things have changed. Yes, there's a trust recession. Yes, there are different things going on economically. Yes, the world is on fire. Yes, overall, I think we are seeing such a shift post-pandemic, just in terms of how we are all engaging online. I think we are more overwhelmed than ever. I say this all the time, but so many people are trying to not be online as much. I think that's why we like Substack. It feels like more substance for when we do want to go online. And I think we have to be naming that AI is here. It seems to be here to stay, and it has shifted the game for all of us. Hey, Vicky, nice to see you. So it feels important to say that. And with that, what I'm noticing with clients, I used to always say for my clients, the biggest conversation we had was mindset. And then for my clients, maybe sales. And then for my clients who are further along, who are kind of at the multi 6, 7 figure mark, we would talk mindset and team the most. What I've seen shift in the past year and a half is that has shifted almost predominantly to messaging marketing content because things have shifted so much and things keep changing online and the landscape has changed. And I think we've all had to kind of like re-get our bearings. And so with that, what I've just heard from so many clients, so just to normalize this is not just you. I cannot tell you how many calls I've had even in the past week where somebody has said, oh my gosh, is content still working? Oh my gosh, content feels so hard. Oh my gosh, marketing feels so hard. And so I think that is a narrative that is out there. And I think two things happen when that is true, right? When it feels harder, right? Like, let's just name it. In some ways it is harder. I don't like to say it's harder. I think it's different. For me, it actually feels easier, and I'll explain why. But let's just name it is different. And when something is different, our brains do not like things that are different. That feels harder. But I think collectively, when we are saying these things, this also gets into our brain and we start to, it's helpful to normalize, but we start to think that is what is just globally true. I was talking about this with another client just yesterday. She was sort of like, are people still getting big results? I was like, oh my gosh, every single one of my clients is getting big results. But she had heard so much about how everything has changed online, almost all this doomsday talk. And so it was getting ingrained as this is the truth. And so I just want to name that, like, yes, there is an element of truth to that. There's a reason for that, but that doesn't mean that that has to be your experience or that means you can't get results. It just means we have to adapt and change so that we're not the blockbuster of our industry. And I am seeing in my business, content is still absolutely working. Hey, Vicky. I just saw the emoji there. And so just to give you a little context, so you can see behind the scenes of my business, and then I'll dive into what I'm seeing as that the shift, because I've absolutely shifted how I'm changing sharing content. But just so I can give you behind the scenes because I think on Substack, some of you all don't know me from before. I've been in business for over 10 years. I'm a one-on-one business coach. That's all I offer is one-on-one, which means I see intimately. I have clients who've worked with me for 5-6 years in multiple industries at multiple levels. So just starting out to 7 figures. So I'm seeing like firsthand, I'm like in the weeds with my clients every day, looking at their content, seeing their results. And I have a revenue share model. So I also am paid partially based on what my clients make. So I really see what's going on and what's working. So I will say in my own business, content has always been the number one way I have brought in clients and made money. I've been fully booked for 7.5, 8 years with 20 to 23 one-on-one clients, just for context there. Yes, I've always gotten on calls. Yes, I talk a lot about relationship building, but I was just talking about this with somebody yesterday. I didn't come into business with like a big network of people who were building businesses. I had to build my own network. I had to build relationships, and I did that through content. Today, the number one way I'm staying fully booked, because I am fully booked, so I don't have time to go, network as much or build relationships on that way. The number one way my business has stayed fully booked and continues to make and pay me and profit multi-six figures is content. So content is absolutely still working. I just had a bunch of consults this week because I have a spot opening up next month. Every single one of those consultations came to me thanks to content and referenced my content as to why they think I'm the right coach or why they want to work with me. So just to give you some evidence there, every single one, I have a couple of clients who don't use content marketing. So I won't say every single one of my clients, but if I look at my clients who are leveraging content for their marketing strategy, every one of my clients who is making money and getting results and using content, their content is translating into sales. I just wrapped up a couple of launches with clients. All of them filled out their launches. One had a record-breaking, actually, they were all record-breaking launches. So bigger results than in the past in this year, all thanks to content. And so I just want us to see content is still working. Content is not dead. It's just the way in which we are consuming content has changed. And what we are all looking for as buyers, our buyer behavior has changed. And so we have to think about that when we're looking at what we're putting out there. Hi, is it Ivan? Maybe. Hi, Ivan. And there's somebody else, but I don't know who your name is. If you want to say hi, feel free to say hi. Let me know if this is landing for you. What I've seen change overall, and we have to think about, I always think, how has my behavior changed? With AI, and I'm probably a broken record, but I think it's just helpful to give the context here. With AI in particular, information is no longer a commodity. So back in, let's say 2020, when kind of everybody was stuck at home, we were bored because of the pandemic, we wanted content, we were glued to our screens, right? So we were consuming a lot of content. I do think we really wanted more informational content. That AI wasn't what it is. I didn't think we had AI then. And we did share a lot more information, how to. That was how we showed we were an expert, right? It was all about build authority, build your expertise. I was just talking about this with a client this morning. We still need to build authority. We still need to build expertise. But because AI can now spit out information at us, the way in which we build authority and expertise and build a relationship and that know, like, and trust is no longer here's how much I know. Here's how I'm a guru. Here's all of the information. Add that with the trust recession. Add that with most of us want to spend less time online because we've been online too much and we're a little burnt out from it, right? We want to consume less. It is no longer a time of fire hose people with things, right? Hopefully this is tracking, right? We go online. It's we want to have something of quality that really speaks to us. And we want to know if we're consuming something, we are consuming something from a human. And we want to know if we're going to invest or buy from somebody that we're buying from a human. Otherwise, we will just all go to AI. Why wouldn't we? Because we can either get it free or for a low cost, and it'll be a little bit more personalized. Sensei says, I think I might be somebody else. Hi. Oh, now it's showing your nice name. Hi, nice to see you here. I'm glad you told me you're here because it's because I know you. So very nice to see you on our live. So what we are consuming has shifted. And so we still need to demonstrate that we are an authority, that we are an expert. But the way in which we do this and the way in which we build trust has to be different. And we still need to, I think last year I was talking a lot about like personal branding and bringing more of the personal and our values into our content. I think that is still true, but I think even that to some degree, I think that is still absolutely true. We're still building personal brands, still bringing more of your personality and your values into your content. But I think the big thing that is shifting because of trust, because of AI, is we are now looking to content to see, can we see ourselves in somebody's content, and can we see them go through the journey and that they're walking their talk and understand what it is like to be on the journey with them? Can we kind of see them through their journey? We would label this as authenticity, right? Everybody's throwing around the word authenticity. Authentic content is absolutely where it's at and what's selling. And I think the term authentic content is the most confusing, like, mind fuck of a term, because like, what does that even mean? Like, weren't we authentic when we were sharing? I wasn't not authentic when I was sharing more informational content in 2020. I don't think I've ever been inauthentic in my content. So I think when we hear that, that doesn't make sense. At least to me, I think that is a very unhelpful, not that anybody's trying to share that in an unhelpful way, but I just don't think that gives us a lot to understand. And so I want to unpack what I'm actually seeing that change, what I'm noticing, what I've had multiple consultations this week, and what I've had reflected to me over and over again is specific things in my content that I have shared. And they are all specific parts of me taking the mask down, which I'll explain that, and taking somebody along on my journey with me and sharing my thought process around it, or what I'm doing, or how I'm thinking about it, or how I'm walking a client through it as in real time as possible. What I'm doing, this is very meta. In this conversation here, what I'm sharing is literally my thought process and what I've been doing in my content recently. And what I'm seeing is when we can take people along on the journey with us, and we can show them in real time, not afterwards, right? When we've figured it all out or it's all polished, but when we can take them in real time and we can take them along in the journey, and when we can show them not all the polished, perfected bits and what we've had to work through, what we've had to navigate, what we're thinking as it relates to our work, right? We're trying to be strategically vulnerable and authentic here as it relates to our work and our expertise. That is one of the best ways to actually show up and demonstrate our confidence, our authority, our expertise, our mastery, and to build a level of trust, but to also help people see themselves in our content and to differentiate. Because the one thing you have that nobody else has, that AI does not have, the one thing when there are hundreds of people who are doing something like you, is your story and your journey. And the one thing I see people resist the most or try to like perfect and polish and wait until what's the thing we always used to hear in the past? Share from the scar, not from the wound. I probably said that in the past. I think that is no longer the case. I don't think any of us should be sharing from the wound. If we have a big wound, that's probably not the thing we should be teaching on or sharing content around. That probably isn't our zone of genius and our expertise. However, taking people along on our journey, showing people what we're actually thinking, what we're actually processing, what we're actually working through, what actually led to a result that we have, what actually helped a client get a result that they have. Like I'm sharing here with my content, right? My content has shifted. I'm sharing how I'm thinking about this and that journey. That type of content is the content that is performing. What I'm seeing is performing best. I'm seeing it get more reach. I'm seeing it get more engagement, and I'm seeing it translate into more sales. And I'm seeing it even cut down the customer journey. A year ago, I was saying the customer journey is longer than ever. That is still true in some businesses, so I don't want to say that isn't true, but I'm seeing in my own business, my customer journey has gotten shorter and shorter and shorter than ever. And for them, like remarkably slow, even with cold traffic. And I'm seeing the same in a lot of my clients who have a launch model. But the big difference is bringing in this type of content. So let me see no, I don't think there's any questions. Let me know if you have questions. I'm going to pull up, I always say I have notes and then I do not reference them at all, but I did have some specific things I wanted to share so that I can land the plane on what I mean by this. So let me just pull this up here. So I think the big thing I want to help all of us think about, and what I think about when I'm writing content currently, is instead of, I think this is where a lot of us get stuck. I think because content feels harder than ever, in air quotes, because people are saying content doesn't work the same way, what I think that naturally has us do is think, I must be missing something. This is hard. Somebody else has the answer, the secret. And so what we tend to do is go look outside of ourselves to other businesses to see what are they sharing. How are they doing content? What's working for them? Which is really hard to know because we don't actually know what's working for people behind the scenes. I say this all the time, but just because somebody has a big audience or lots of visible markers of engagement does not mean that they are getting sales on the back end of their business. I cannot tell you how many people have hired me with like very large audiences and they are excellent at what they do, but they're a large audience that took a different strategy than what their content needs to sell, and they are having challenges selling, and that's what we have to work on. But when we're sort of like, this feels hard, I don't know what's converting, we tend to look outside ourselves. We tend to be like, what's that hook somebody else is using? What's that strategy? And then we really get into this, what should I be talking about? What should I do? What is the right way to do this? What should I say so that somebody will want to hire me? I think this is a very, and look, this isn't even the worst question to be asking. However, if what we're seeing is helping us stand out and what is actually converting is, in air quotes, authentic marketing, authentic content, as soon as we get into what should I do? What is somebody else doing? What's working for somebody else? What should I say so that somebody wants this? We're removing, right? We're getting into we're getting to very checkboxy, like checklisty content, as opposed to what is actually connecting. I think we forget that at the end of the day, business is built on relationships. People buy because of relationships. People buy because of know, like, and trust, which means people buy because of emotion and fill that in with logic. As soon as we get into the checklist mentality, as soon as we get into the shoulds, right, we are removing that emotional connection, but we're also removing that authenticity. And again, I know authenticity is kind of a nebulous word. I'm trying to make it make more sense. So in therapy, this is the way I think about it a little bit. There's a term called mask up, mask down. I'm sure you've heard me explain this before, but for those of you who haven't, I'll repeat myself. When we have our mask up, that is sort of like who we present ourselves to the world as, right? Like it's my mask up is like when I don't feel as safe. It's still me. It's not that it isn't authentic, but it's just sort of like how I present. It's presenter Kim. Mask down is like who I really am. It's when I'm like not trying to perform, not trying to present myself, not trying to like prove anything, not trying to be anything for other people. What I'm seeing, and maybe that's the way to think more about authenticity. It's not like when our mask is up, we aren't being authentic, but we are putting on a mask, right? We are hiding parts of ourselves so that we can be perceived a certain way. And historically, I think that is what has felt like in the past good marketing is. Because of, I think, particularly because of AI, I think a little bit because of the trust recession, that is no longer true. I think mask down, and actually the more and more we can be willing to be strategically vulnerable, pull the mask down and let people see all of us, not just the polished, perfected side of us, not just like the guru and the expert side of us. That is what is connecting, and that is the content I'm seeing is actually help highlight us as somebody who can be trusted, as somebody who is real, as somebody who is not AI, and as somebody who is actually an expert. Because if you think about it, it takes a certain level of confidence and expertise to say, let me show you who I am without the polish, without the mask, without the like perfectly perfect solution, to take you along on the journey, to let you see the messy middle, to let you see what I'm processing, to let you see my mistake, to let you see my win and how I came to it, right? To do that with our mask down, that is actually a very, very different version than what most of us have been taught to share in terms of our marketing. I still think we need to do it in a strategic way. There's a term, I made this up, so if you haven't heard it before, that's why, called strategic vulnerability, meaning we want to be vulnerable and mask down in a strategic way in which we are still coming from our role as a CEO, from our role as an expert, from our role as somebody who, depending on whatever it is you do, that is still saying like, I can support you with this thing, that is still connecting the dots to the result or to the win, right? We might have to romanticize things in a way, but I think the big shift is doing it where we pull our mask down. I want to see this comment here, and then I want to walk you through a specific, or I want to walk through why I think this is so challenging for us. I recently started a series of pages that cover bully strategies. I started generically, but then shifted to include a person real story about how I encountered the strategy and how I failed. The page goes on to prevent the failure. It works. I so appreciate you for sharing that, because I think that's such a great example, because bully strategies in particular, that's quite a vulnerable and personal topic. And then to say, here's a strategy and here's how the strategy in air quote failed, and here's how I learned from it and that worked, and that works. I think it's just so helpful for everybody to hear. And I think this is a great example. I was just talking about this with one of my clients. We were taking a look at her content. Her content is very polished. It is very, look, a lot of us are recovering perfectionists, recovering control freaks. I am, like, I will raise my hand. I am you. I see you. I think for us, this can be particularly challenging. And if you come from, like, you've had another business, you've been in business for a second, I have quite a few clients who are therapists, right? In the therapy world, you're meant to be a bit more mask up and a blank slate. So I think it can sometimes be challenging for my therapist clients. I think for for those of us who have been in business pre 2026, 2020, pre AI, right, we were taught to be a bit more mask up. We did come from a world where, not that any of us wanted to be gurus, but it was a little bit more the kind of the guru marketing, like have all the answers. I've personally never liked that, but I do think we came from that world. And so I think this can feel very confronting and it can kick up a lot of resistance. And while in some ways, me saying to you, just share your journey, just share what's literally true and what you are working through, or what got you to this result, or what you're processing in real time, or what you're supporting clients with in real time, the highs, the lows of it, pull the mask down, in some ways is the easiest thing to do because no one knows our story better than us. Like that is just what we all know. It is kind of the easiest thing to create from, and nobody can copy that, right? Nobody can mimic that. Nobody can be that, and it can build that relationship and trust. I think it kicks up the most resistance for many of us because it is also the opposite of what most of us have taught we should do. What is safe? What will people buy from us? Many of us, if you're a recovering perfectionist, or maybe still a perfectionist, if you're a recovering control freak, if you've been taught you need to be a blank slate, or if you've been taught any of these things, you have been, or if you have certain different types of trauma, right? You have been taught you are only as safe as how you are perceived. You are only as safe as, the mask up version of you and how you can sort of control how people see and perceive you. And that is a very, very real thing, which is why this is both a simple thing and I want to name, like, this is the real work I'm doing with clients, right? We can say, share this thing, and then we've got to unpack what's coming up and why it doesn't always feel safe. And so that becomes the work because yes, this is the content I'm seeing get the most attention, get the most reach, get the most engagement, bring in the most clients, cut down the customer journey, bring in sales. And if it is activating your nervous system and makes you feel wildly unsafe to share something like that, right, that is a very tough place to feel like an expert, right? To come from your expertise, to come from your authority, and to create content from. And so that sort of has to be the first work we do, is how do we create, it always comes back to safety, doesn't it? How do we create some safety for you in your nervous system, that it is safe to take the mask down, that it is safe to let somebody see the imperfections. One of the things I reflect to clients, and this is just helpful for y'all to hear, one of the things I think about a lot is what's the type of client I want to work with and what's the relationship and expectation I want to set with somebody. Personally, now y'all have different businesses, different industries, different niches, but personally, I know I don't want to work with somebody who thinks I am a guru, who thinks I have all the answers, who thinks that I am perfect, who thinks that if they get into a coaching session with me, I'm going to be like, let me tell you everything to do, and here's the right thing, because that's not how coaching works. That's not how business works. I am also a perfectly imperfect human. I'm an expert at what I do. I'm excellent at what I do, but I don't have all the answers for somebody, right? Our job is to co-create, to figure that out together. So I think about that. If I don't want somebody coming in, right? Like how many of us have had that where it's like somebody comes in when we're like almost frustrated at our client because it's like they're giving their power away to us. They want us to have all the secrets. They want us to have all the answers. They want like that quick fix solution. They're like mad that they're not perfect. I'm like, I don't understand why this is happening. It's like, oh, but my content is also kind of portraying that. So that's the type of client it's going to attract. And so I think about that a lot with creating more safety around more masked down content. And we could call it authentic. We could call it sharing your journey. We could call it sharing what's real. Not only is this going to call in people who need exactly what you have to share, right? Who are looking. Someone just reflected this to me who hired me not too long ago, who was like, I was looking I couldn't find it. I was looking for somebody exactly like you. And it was because of certain things I share that she could see herself in that. So not only do you attract people who are looking exactly for you, but they can't see you if you have your mask on, but you also, I find, attract better fit clients who aren't going to expect you to be the keeper and holder of all the secrets and all of the answers, unless that's what you sell. But I think for most of you, if you're here for the types of offers you have, that's just not what we're doing. Speaking of not being perfect, what is my hair doing? Let me know if that lands, or questions, reflections around that, and then I will share another piece on that, and then I'll give you some prompts. Wait, I have so many notes here. Did I want to say something else on this part? This is the other piece I wanted to share on that. The other thing I like to think of, so in terms of practice, I'll share the prompts at the end, but just in terms of kind of how I think about approaching this, I think if you came to my webinar last week, I talked about the importance of sharing how you've learned and earned something. That's a term from Russell Brunson, so just to give credit where credit is due. But that is essentially helping people understand, instead of just spewing information at them. When we are in a busy world and there is no trust, people need to know, why should I listen to you? Why should I listen to what you have to say? And so with sharing more vulnerable, authentic content, I do think we have to let people see how we've come to learn and earn our expertise, what it is we sell, what we help people with. Oftentimes, how we've learned and earned something is not simply like, here are all of my results, though that can be helpful as well. But usually, the way in which we can best communicate that is through something like a story, through specific details, right? Through specific statistics, but oftentimes it's through a personal story of how we came to learn and earn something. Usually, for most of us, if we have learned and earned something, meaning this is how I came to what I'm sharing, it is through a journey of imperfection. It is through what was being shared here, just in terms of having a bullying strategy and seeing like kind of what worked, what didn't work. In my webinar, I taught webinars and how to make sales from webinars. I shared I've done 63 webinars, and at about webinar 57, the online space had shifted and mine weren't converting anymore. And I shared, I looked at mine and here's how they kind of sucked. I mean, they didn't suck. I'm teasing myself a little bit, but I had to pull my mask down and share a little bit of that journey. This wasn't, to me, I don't think it's all that vulnerable, but it is masked down. It is very authentic. It is very not, let me just show you the polished end. But it's also, I mean, think about this. It's way more interesting. Who wants to hear like, okay, here's just how to do a webinar? It's so much more interesting and compelling to know the details around it and how I came to understand that and how I came to learn that. But that also builds trust, and taking then somebody along on that journey then also means then kind of part B and what we're talking about in terms of what I'm really seeing working, then I'm sharing what I'm literally actually doing and seeing. And I think that's the other piece to this. So there's the vulnerable part of like, what's our journey? But then there's the, what are we actually doing for ourselves with our clients to move through that journey? And I think that's the part sometimes where we get stuck in the shoulds or in the mask up piece again, because I think about that. The webinar is just a good example because it's just very present, because I just hosted that last week. I could have taught a webinar based on Russell Brunson's webinar on webinar secrets and exactly what he does. I could have taught, a webinar like, here's the information on like technically how to teach a webinar, except for that's not what's worked for me. That's not what I've actually done. And so, yes, I needed to share my journey of how I came to this, how I came to learn and earn this. But I also needed to share in terms of that mask down and in terms of the journey and in terms of the authenticity, what I am actually doing, like the journey in terms of what's actually worked for me, what's actually worked for my clients. That's kind of what I'm doing here with this content. So hopefully that piece connects. It's almost like two different sides of the same coin in terms of that authenticity and sharing our journey. Yes, there is the more vulnerable. What are the failures? What are the misses? How do we learn and earn that? It could also be you didn't have any challenges, but there's also the, practically speaking, not what's the information, not what's the right way everybody else is saying to do this. How are you specifically, or how are your clients specifically getting this result, having this transformation, working through this, learning this process, which I think, I mean, I don't know, this is my best performing webinar to date. I've had some very nice feedback from it. I think part of the reason for that is I'm not just regurgitating what Russell Brunson said or what other people said or what AI would. If AI had tried to create that or tell me what to do, it would have told me to do something different. Instead, I walked you through what I, Kim Argetsinger, in 10 years of business, has learned and earned through trials and tests and through being on over 5,000 one-on-one coaching sessions, but also what I've tested and tried in real time, what worked, what didn't work, and what I'm seeing currently work. And then that really differentiates us in our content. So I think that's the piece. And I think that's where it can get sticky for us, because it's sort of like if we have something that's a little bit different, or if it's not exactly what everybody else is doing, or it's not what other people say you should do, I think it's very, like, there's the vulnerable piece, right? That can feel challenging, but I think that can also kick up for a lot of us. But is this right? Is this okay? And what I would offer is, in my opinion, like the way I think about that is thought leadership. And that type of thought leadership, when we marry that type of thought leadership with our journey, our story, all of that is the most authentic content you can create, but it is also what people are looking for, right? Otherwise, why wouldn't we just go to AI? right? We're looking for what is authentic, what is real, are you a human or are you a robot? Because I can literally go to a robot now. So we want to know that part, but then we also want to know, do you have something different than what a robot can give me? And so not that we have to like go coming up with like crazy new methodologies or frameworks. Don't put that pressure on yourself. I think what we forget is all of us are doing our work in a slightly different way than somebody else. And so when we can stop looking at what is working for somebody else, how is somebody else doing this? What's the right way to do this? And instead come back to, yes, what's my journey and how did I learn and earn this? But also, what is my actual process? One of the prompts I will give you, one of the questions I ask myself is I will look at a result and I will say, tune out the noise. Kim, what did you actually do to get this result? What did you actually think? What did you actually work through? What did you actually navigate to get this result? Or I will look at a client result and I'll say, okay, Kim, forget all the things like I know too much about business for my own good. What did this client and I actually work through? What did we actually process through? What did we actually do? How can I get as close to that as possible and translate to that to content? Yes, I can share how I learned and earned this in terms of my journey, but also this is the specific journey I or my client is walking through that is creating that result. And that is, even if it's similar to somebody else's, that is going to be unique and that is going to be my thought leadership because it is the way in which I do this work, nobody else can. And it's also going to help other people see themselves in this, see that I'm human, right? And understand how this could work for them as well. Let me know if I landed the plane on that if you have any questions. Okay, question here. My change in content was based on an article you wrote. Oh my gosh, that makes my heart so happy. Don't remember the title, but it hit me hard. You gave great insights. Oh my gosh, y'all, I'm a happy crier. I'm also really working on receiving nice things like this. So don't mind me as I get a little teary, but I obviously love my clients, but I can't work with everybody one-on-one. And so I do put a lot of thought and intention into this content. I want so much for it to support you all and to help you all have shifts and get results. And so nothing makes me happier than that. Thank you for sharing that. That just made, I will coast off that for a while. Thank you. Told you I was a word of affirmations, girl. Okay. Let me refocus us. I'm just going to share 2 client shifts that we made just so you can see why this is feeling actually, like why this is actually easier. Because I think sometimes this can feel harder, but I mean, I don't know, this feels way easier to me than like trying to find somebody's hooks online and follow content pillars, which, hey, back in the day, I pretended to use content pillars. Actually, I really did. That's not how my brain works. But I find this to be so much easier in terms of coming up with content topics because all you have to do is mine your own journey and your client's journey and experience. But I had one client, and I think this is just helpful to hear. I had one client who she's been in business for a while, but she has just been on every call. She's like, content is so hard. I hate content. I know I made her time track and she told me it was taking her, no joke, all day to create a reel on Instagram. And so we were just kind of unpacking that. And so the prompt I gave her was essentially, it was like, what do you actually think? What are you actually doing? She's like, I can just talk about that. I was like, yes. Anyway, so she messaged me recently. Content has been, instead of taking all day, it has been taking minutes, but it has felt so much lighter, so much easier. She's getting more reach. She's getting more engagement. And she also just celebrated 39K in 30 days. And I think before that, she was probably making about 6 to 8K per month. So I think, not to say it's all from this content shift. I think there's always multiple factors. I think part of this is also there's such a confidence shift when you let yourself share from this place. I think it just helps you actually to step into your authority even more and into your confidence more. Again, it takes a different level of confidence and authority to share from this place. And so, yes, we still need to show and demonstrate we are authorities in our work and experts. We still need to have authority content. It's just authority content looks very different than it did in 2020. And so this is, I think, really helping her. She even said on a call recently, she's like, oh my gosh, this is like, she's like, I just feel so much more like I know what the fuck I'm talking about, because she does. But I think this is helping her because before she was looking so much outside of herself and almost second guessing and like not in her trust and giving her power away a little bit to her content, but it also made it so much easier. And then I have another client, she just celebrated a really great launch for her course, but we were actually post-launch because she has an evergreen funnel. We were just looking at her landing pages and doing some split testing, and her landing pages were converting, but we wanted to bump up that conversion rate because she runs ads to it and we just want to have the funnel increasing. And so the main shift we made is I was coaching her through and we were just kind of going line by line to do a split test on landing pages. And the split test on the second one, we just pulled out a little bit more of like, what's her journey? What is she, exactly what we're talking about here? What has she been kind of working through? What is she working through with clients? And she just messaged me last night. That landing page, I think it's like a 10% increase in conversion. It's a significant difference from what it was before, just in terms of like, that's a pretty big shift from something that's already converting well. And that was the main shift we've made. And so I just wanted to share, like, just so some context in terms of this can make it feel easier, but also we're seeing very quickly how that's making a shift even in things like landing page copy. Okay, I'm gonna answer this question and then I want to give you all some prompts to close out with. Okay, Sensi says, can you give an insight on a way to step back and get out of your own head and look at the information you want to share from a beginner's viewpoint? Maybe, would you mind asking this a different way? I'm going to tell you what I think you're asking, and if you mean this differently, let me know. So can you give me an insight on a way to step back and get out of your own head and look at the information you want to share from a beginner's viewpoint? I think what you're asking is, how can you, like, if you're not a beginner anymore, how can you share what you need to kind of meet somebody at where they're in their journey, knowing that we are often experts and sometimes we can get into like our expert lingo and we just like want to not be in professional jargon and lingo. I think that's what you're saying. What really helps me is two things. I just always think of myself as a beginner, even though I'm an expert. So like I'm an expert in what I do, but I like to try to take a beginner's mindset in that like I'm always learning and growing and evolving through my own work. I'm always seeing new lenses of it. And so that helps me a lot if that's a frame your mind can take. But the other thing I like to think about is, two things. I like to think, what is the story I can tell here? I think when we get into storytelling and when we think about how can I show instead of how can I tell, so this is like when we're actually crafting the content around it. So show meaning, how can I show a story? How can I show an example or an analogy versus how can I tell somebody what I want them to know, what the lesson is, what the facts and figures are. When we can shift to show versus tell, I find that really helps us to kind of strip away the professional lingo, the stuff that can feel very like professory, the stuff that can feel very talking at people instead of talking with them. And so sometimes that shift alone, I tested something on Instagram yesterday. I was pretty sure would bomb, and I'm pretty sure it did. But one of the things I was testing is, especially on Instagram, I know if I come at more like, here's the information, let me tell you what I figured out, versus let me show you an analogy, a story, how I came to this, how I learned and earned this, what my story is around this, an example. As soon as I do that, it falls flat and I sound like I'm the expert talking at you instead of talking with you. So let me know if that's helpful, or if you have different questions. We are experts in our field, need to be relatable to the beginner. Okay, I think let me know if this answers it if you have a follow-up question. But yes, I think that is such a helpful way to think about that. The other thing I'll often do as well is I'll just give a pass through my content and just look at, this is like copywriting 101 lesson. I think there's a tool, I think it's the Hemingway tool. There's an app, I haven't used it, but I think you can actually run your content through it. But essentially I will look at what is any language that is above a kindergarten first grade reading language level, not because our people are dumb at all, but what they have just found is all of us, even genius level IQ people, we tend to consume and connect better when it is at a kindergarten to first grade reading level. So I try to strip that language. And then the other thing I try to remember is all of this is relational and all of this is emotional. So just going back through, is this relational? Is this emotional? Or is this me trying to show all the information I know, telling, talking at? If it's on that side, the talking at, teaching, information, everything I know, almost like proving, in some ways I just think like, oh, that's mask up. If I was pulling my mask down, I was talking to a best friend like with a cup of coffee or over like a drink, how would I share this experience? Okay, great. You said it does. Okay, great. Glad that lens. Okay, let me close you all out. Did I have anything else big here? I think I shared most of the things I wanted to share. I always, after these, I'm like, oh, there was a big nugget I wanted to share with you, but then we'll put it in another live stream. I just wanted to give you all a couple of prompts. These are the questions I actually ask myself that help me come to this quite a bit, both from the how did I learn and earn this element, but also what is my journey of this? And what I mean by that is like the simple way of this is the first question here is, what actually helped me get this result, or what actually helped my client get this result? I know this is such a Captain Obvious question, and yet I think so many of us go 3 steps around it because we go to, what's the thing I should be talking about? What's the thing my ideal client, oh, that's a bad question, but like, what's the thing I think my ideal client needs to hear, like that other people are talking about in my industry, as opposed to what actually helped me get this result or what actually helped my client get this result. Breaking that down further, what did I actually do? What did I actually work through? What did I actually process? What did I actually think, or do I actually think, to get this result or outcome? Whether this is a good or bad outcome. So whether it's, there was the example of this strategy failed that Sensei gave, and like, what did I actually do? Work through process. What led to this not working, or what led to this working? So an outcome can be, a result can be positive or negative. I think sometimes we're so scared to share, a client didn't get a result, or that we had a failure, and we forget that this is all a journey, right? We fail forward. There's no such thing as failure. It's only a failure if we don't learn from it or we don't move forward from it. But sometimes those can be gold mines for content and for things that are really valuable for your audience. In my webinar last week, right, I shared, like, I had a webinar. I was like, oh, it was 2.5 hours long. That was not it. It was it's not that it was bad. It was good information. People loved it, but it just got me a lot of nice comments, and it didn't get me clients. And I had to look at, well, why was that? What did I actually do? What actually led to an outcome of a bunch of really nice, this is so inspiring comments, but not people saying, I want to hire you comments? How do I unpack that? That turned into not only me getting really great results and figuring out how to do webinars that convert into sales and helping my clients do the same for really big launches, but that also helped create content that is actually valuable for people. Okay, what did my client do? So this is a version of that, but what did my client actually do, or what did we actually work on? This is the simplest one and also the hardest one, but what do I actually think about this? Like, take a pause. What do you actually think? Not what does AI tell you to think, not what does your coach tell you to think, not what does somebody online say to think. What do you actually think about this? What am I actually navigating? I put the word actually in all of this because we need to remember that. What am I actually navigating and how currently? What am I actually learning and growing through as it relates to my offer or work, and how? I was just talking about this with another client who we've been looking at her content quite a bit, and one of her challenges is she can sometimes get into a place where she's almost speaking to what was true a couple of years ago in a different season of her life and business. And what we were talking about is what she's navigating right now. She's excellent at what she does, and what she's navigating right now is so what her people need. They need somebody they need to see somebody navigating these things. I'm just not giving specifics because I want to keep client confidentiality. These are the very things I know people are looking for, someone like her. But if she's not sharing what she's navigating, what she's learning, what she's going through, what's feeling challenging, what's feeling hard, what's still allowing her to get really great results in her business, despite then how she's thinking about it, how she's working through it, her people can't see her, right? They're going to see somebody else who is willing to share those things. So what are you actually learning, growing through as it relates to your offer or work? So hopefully those prompts are helpful for you. I will hop off in a second, but if you have any closing questions, drop them for me in the chat, and same on the replay. I'll check that before I hop off. But I think just to put this in a bow here, yes, content has shifted online, but I just really want to be a voice for content is still absolutely working. Again, it is the main tool I use in my business. I had my best year in business ever last year. I've had some of not only my best personal results, but I just had celebrated my best revenue share income month. And that means my clients are having their best results ever, because I get paid based on a percentage based on what they're making. So if that's just an indication of, like, not only is the industry not dead and people are still buying and people are still making money, what I'm seeing is my content is performing better than it was even in 2020 when it was like the heyday, and the same for my clients. And so just let that be. I just want to keep being evident in our space, because otherwise there's a little bit of, we can create self-fulfilling prophecies for ourselves when we hear too much doomsday noise. Yes, things have changed. Content is just different than it was before. I think different can feel harder because anything that is non-familiar, right? Or that we have a learning curve around can feel more challenging. But I also think in many ways, when we're thinking of content in this way and what's currently working in terms of authenticity, right? Masked down, taking people along on the journey with us, letting them see more behind the scenes of our thought process, what we're doing, what's working for us, what's actually working for us and our clients, right? What we actually think. In many ways, that's also a lot easier, because it's just whatever's true for us. And I think the what is challenging is more what's in our mind and the mindset trash around it and how it doesn't feel safe. And not to invalidate that. That's why I have a job. That's why so many of us have jobs to support our clients with it. But I might just label as that's the hard, sticky part, right? The being vulnerable, the pulling the mask down, the being seen in that, the feeling like, oh, what are people gonna think? Like, are they going to think I'm an expert if I have a challenge, if I have something messy, like navigating through that part of things, I think is what can feel so challenging. I know the last thought I was going to share with you. I think that's a closing reminder. What I'll put here is when we think about marketing and what good marketing is, at the end of the day, good marketing is just romanticizing your story, right? It's just romanticizing your approach. It is just romanticizing what is true for you. And so I would just think about that in terms of strategic vulnerability, in terms of pulling the mask down, in terms of sharing your journey. I would just think about how can I romanticize this, and romanticize this not meaning being authentic or pretend things are all roses when it's got a bunch of poo on it. That's not what I mean. What I mean is how can we romanticize it in terms of I romanticized my webinars that were 2.5 hours and were an information dump and that just got me really nice comments and didn't convert into clients. I romanticize that in terms of, look, here's still what's great about this. Here's why I'm still an expert. Like, here's how I took this and learned from it and turned this into webinars that convert really well in a time where most people are saying that they don't work, right? We can still romanticize those. I get to romanticize all of my business and my story and tell you, this is why one-on-one is great. This is why my business is great, right? Because I genuinely feel that's true and that makes my mindset work for me. But that's what also makes good marketing. Like that's anybody who you see who is crushing it, they are just romanticizing their story, but it's still their story. Your story still has to be authentic. So I think that romanticizing thing can get us confused because I think we can think that means put glitter on poo, and that is not what that means. So hopefully that lands for y'all. Okay, I think that's everything I got for you here. Hopefully this will make content easier for you. Hopefully this will help you have some things to hook into. Reach out if you have questions. Dagmar says, I love this language. Oh, I'm so glad. Nice to see you as well. Reach out if you have any questions for me. I'm still figuring out Substack, but I think you can direct message me. I've direct messaged a couple people there, and this will go as a replay. So if you're watching on the replay, feel free to leave any questions below that. And then I love you all so much, and I will see you next week. I think I have an article. I'll see you for a live the week afterward if you're enjoying these. Bye.